Hello there, and welcome. Go ahead and find your comfortable spot for the night, letting your body settle into a feeling of rest. You don't have to do anything right now, just relax and listen. It's a funny thing about our minds. When we look back on our day, we often put it into one of two boxes, the good day box or the bad day box. It's like we were either a great success or a complete failure. On a good day, we feel productive, we ate the right things, we were patient with people. But on a bad day, we feel lazy, we indulged too much, we were irritable. And this back and forth, this constant swing between feeling proud of ourselves and feeling disappointed, it can be exhausting. It's like we're living on a pendulum of our own judgment. And it's this constant swinging between extremes that so often keeps our minds in a state of unrest, never allowing us to just be, and never allowing us to find the quiet needed for sleep. So tonight, we're going to explore a very gentle and a very old idea that offers a way to step off that pendulum. It's an ancient idea from Buddhist philosophy known as the middle way. It's not a philosophy of perfection, and it's not a philosophy of giving up. It's a path of balance, a path of kindness that frees us from the need to be a perfect success and also frees us from the feeling of being a complete failure. So again, there's no need to remember any of this. Just get comfortable, let the day go, and let these ideas drift by as you prepare for a peaceful night's rest. So, let's first look at one side of that pendulum. One of the great extremes that we can get caught in. We can call this the path of too much. On the surface, this path seems like the most desirable one. It is the path of pleasure, of indulgence, of constantly seeking what feels good. It's the belief that if we can just fill our lives with enough positive experiences, enough beautiful things, enough delicious tastes, enough praise, and enough entertainment, then we will finally be happy. We will finally be at peace. It is a life spent trying to add more and more to our cup, believing that a full cup is a happy one. This is the path of the endless scroll, looking for one more interesting video, one more beautiful image. It's the path of binge watching a series late into the night, chasing the feeling of stimulation and escape. It's the path of always wanting the next new thing, believing that a new purchase, a new trip, or a new achievement will finally bring a lasting sense of satisfaction. In the story of the Buddha, this is the life that the young prince, Siddhartha, was born into. Before he began his search for wisdom, he lived a life of unimaginable luxury. He was kept inside beautiful palace walls, shielded from any sight of suffering or discomfort. His every single desire was met the moment it arose. If he wanted music, there was music. If he wanted delicious food, it was served. He was surrounded by beauty, by comfort, by every possible sensory pleasure. This was the perfect life, the very definition of the path of too much. And yet, in the middle of all this perfection, he felt a deep and a quiet unrest. He realized that the pleasure he felt was always temporary. The beautiful music would end, and a feeling of emptiness would follow. The delicious meal would be finished, and soon he would just be hungry again. Each pleasure was like a wave that would rise, and then inevitably, it would fall, leaving him on the shore, waiting and wanting for the next wave to arrive. He also felt a subtle, hidden anxiety, the anxiety that comes from having everything. When you have everything, you have everything to lose. There is a quiet fear that this perfect world could be taken away at any moment. The pleasure was fragile. This is the hidden flaw in the path of too much. It is a path of constant chasing. The more you get, the more you seem to need to feel the same level of satisfaction. And at the end of a day lived on this path, even a day filled with good things, we often don't feel a deep sense of peace. Instead, we can feel a strange kind of exhaustion, a feeling of being wired but tired. Our senses are overstimulated. Our mind is still buzzing, still wanting, still looking for the next thing to consume. It is a mind that does not know how to be still. It is a mind that has forgotten how to simply be. and it is not a mind that can easily find its way to sleep. So, we've looked at this path of constant pleasure-seeking, the life of the young prince in his palace. And the great, quiet puzzle he discovered was that even when all of his desires were met, he still didn't feel a lasting sense of peace. And this brings us to a very deep and a very simple truth about the way our minds work. The problem isn't the pleasure itself. The problem is what comes right after it. The problem is the wanting for more. The nature of a desire is that once it is satisfied, it creates an empty space. And into that empty space, a new desire is almost immediately born. It's like a hunger that is always returning. You can eat the most wonderful meal in the world, and you will feel a deep sense of satisfaction. But you know, with absolute certainty, that in a few hours, you will be hungry again. And so it is with all pleasures that we seek from the outside world. The mind gets used to them. It builds a tolerance. The thing that brought you a great deal of excitement yesterday might only bring you a small amount of pleasure today. And so, to feel that same level of excitement, the mind starts to believe it needs something bigger, something newer, something more. This creates a kind of treadmill for the mind. We are constantly walking, constantly putting in the effort of seeking and acquiring, but we are not actually getting anywhere. The destination of lasting satisfaction always seems to be just a little bit further down the road. It creates a state of low-level, constant restlessness, a subtle hum of dissatisfaction that runs quietly in the background, even on a day that seems good. It is the ghost of the last pleasure and the shadow of the next one. You can feel this very clearly at the end of a day spent scrolling on your phone. You have seen 100 interesting things, 100 beautiful things, 100 funny things. Your mind has been fed a constant stream of tiny, fleeting pleasures. But when you finally put the phone down and the room is quiet, what is the feeling that is left behind? It is rarely a feeling of deep, calm satisfaction. More often, it is a feeling of being a little bit wired, a little bit fuzzy, a feeling of what's next. Your mind has been trained for hours to seek the next thing, and it doesn't know how to stop. It is still leaning forward, still wanting, still looking for its next small hit of stimulation. This is the unrest that follows wanting more. It is the state of a mind that has been taught to be a consumer of experiences. And a mind that is always looking for the next thing is, by its very nature, never content with what is here, right now. And this state is the absolute opposite of the state required for sleep. Sleep is not a state of seeking. It is a state of settling. Sleep is not a state of leaning forward into the next moment. It is a state of leaning back and letting go of this one. And so, a mind that has spent the entire day on this treadmill of wanting has a very hard time remembering how to get off. It is still trying to walk, even when it is lying down. So, we have seen the hidden exhaustion that lies at the end of the path of too much, the endless chase for pleasure and stimulation. Now, let's swing that great pendulum all the way to the other side, and look at the other extreme that we can get caught in. This is a path that looks very different on the surface, but as we will see, it can lead to the very same feeling of unrest. We can call this the path of not enough. This is the path of harsh self-discipline, of denial, and of constantly pushing ourselves. It's the belief that peace and wisdom are a prize that must be earned through hardship. It's the voice in our head that tells us we are not good enough as we are, and that to become worthy, we must be stricter, tougher, and more relentless with ourselves. It is a life spent trying to empty our cup, believing that an empty cup is a pure one. This is the path of the extreme diet, where we deny ourselves even the simplest of pleasures, believing that this denial will make us stronger. It's the path of the workaholic, who pushes through exhaustion, ignores the needs of their body, and believes that rest is a form of laziness. It's the path of the perfectionist, who is never satisfied with their own efforts, who always sees the flaw in their own work, and who lives under the constant, heavy shadow of their own inner critic. In the story of the Buddha, After Prince Siddhartha left his palace of pleasure, this is the path he chose next. He was so disillusioned with the emptiness of his luxurious life that he decided the answer must lie in the exact opposite. He became an ascetic, a wandering hermit. He subjected himself to the most extreme forms of hardship. He ate barely enough to survive. He slept on beds of thorns. He exposed his body to the scorching heat and the freezing cold. He believed that if he could just conquer his body, if he could just crush all of his natural desires and comforts, he would finally break through to some higher state of enlightenment. He pushed himself to the very limit of human endurance, and many people who saw him at this time thought he was a great and a holy man. He was the perfect model of self-denial. He was the very definition of the path of not enough. But what was happening on the inside? After years of this intense and grueling practice, he took a quiet, honest inventory of his own mind, and he realized that he was no closer to peace than he had been in the palace. In fact, in some ways, he was even further away. His mind was not calm and clear. It was a battleground. It was consumed with the constant, all-encompassing struggle against his own body. He was obsessed with his hunger. He was distracted by his pain. His mind was in a state of constant, relentless war with itself. He had not found freedom. He had just traded one kind of prison for another. The prison of wanting more pleasure was replaced by the prison of wanting more control, more purity, more willpower. The striving was still there, and at the end of a day lived on this path, the mind is not at peace. It is in a state of exhaustion, but it is a harsh, brittle kind of exhaustion. It is the feeling of a soldier who has been fighting all day and has finally collapsed, but who still believes the war is not yet won. So, we have seen the story of the young man who would become the Buddha as he walked this harsh and difficult path of self-denial. We have seen him push his body to its absolute limits, believing that this was the way to find some ultimate truth or purity. But the most important discovery he made on this path was not about enlightenment. It was about the feeling that this path creates. It is a feeling that is incredibly common and one that so many of us carry into the night. It is the deep, quiet, and wearying heaviness of being too hard on yourself. This path of not enough is fueled by a powerful voice in our minds. We can think of it as the voice of an inner taskmaster or a drill sergeant. And this voice, like the inner expert we've talked about before, is actually trying to help. It has a noble goal. It wants you to be the best version of yourself. It wants you to be strong, disciplined, and respectable. It believes that the only way to achieve this is through constant pressure, through relentless criticism. It believes that if it ever lets up, if it ever gives you a moment of unconditional approval, you will immediately become lazy and your whole life will fall apart. And so, it stays on duty all day, every day. It is the voice that is speaking when you look in the mirror and immediately see a flaw. It is the voice that is speaking when you finish a project and all you can focus on is the one small mistake you made. It is the voice that keeps a running tally of all your failures throughout the day. The workout you skipped, the unhealthy food you ate, the impatient word you spoke. Each one of these perceived failures, in the eyes of the inner taskmaster, is a sign that you are not trying hard enough. And the result is a feeling of weight. Imagine that every time you feel you've fallen short, every time you tell yourself, "I should have done better," you are putting a small, heavy stone into a backpack that you are forced to carry. "I shouldn't have been so tired today." Another stone. "I should be more productive." Another stone. "I should be a better friend, a better parent, a better person." Another stone. By the end of the day, you are carrying an immense and an invisible weight. And when you lie down in bed, you don't get to take the backpack off. Instead, the inner taskmaster decides it's time to do a full inventory. It pulls out every single stone, one by one, and reminds you of its significance. And you are left lying there, feeling the full, crushing weight of your own perceived inadequacies. This creates a state of mind that is the absolute opposite of peace. It is a state of war. It is a civil war happening inside your own head, where one part of you is in a constant battle with another part of you. And a mind that is at war cannot find rest. You cannot be a soldier on a battlefield and a person sleeping soundly in a safe bed at the same time. The body stays in a state of low-level alert. The jaw might be clenched. The breath might be tight. It is a body that is still bracing for the next attack, the next criticism from itself. This is the profound exhaustion that comes from the path of not enough. It is not the clean, simple tiredness that comes from a day of good work. It is the brittle, anxious, and heavy exhaustion that comes from a day of constant self-judgment. It is the feeling of never being good enough, of never being done, of never being able to finally, truly, let your guard down and just be. And this feeling, this deep and painful heaviness, is just as effective at stealing our sleep as the frantic, restless energy of wanting more. So, we have spent a little time now walking down these two very different looking roads. On one side, we have the path of too much, the sun-drenched palace garden, filled with every possible pleasure, a life spent chasing the next good feeling. On the other side, we have the path of not enough, the harsh, windswept wilderness of self-denial, a life spent in constant battle with our own human nature. They seem like complete opposites. One path is a strategy of addition, of trying to fill ourselves up. The other is a strategy of subtraction, of trying to empty ourselves out. And for most of our lives, we feel like these are our only two options. When we get tired of one path, we often run, exhausted and disillusioned, directly to the other. But here is the quiet discovery that lies at the very heart of this philosophy. The great secret that the Buddha realized after experiencing both of these extremes so fully. The paths may look different, but they are secretly the same. They are fueled by the exact same engine. They are both built on a foundation of struggle, of striving, of a deep and a restless dissatisfaction with the way things are. Both paths are built on the false belief that peace is a destination that you must earn through intense and relentless effort. Perhaps the best way to see this is to imagine your mind as a great pendulum. On one side, at the very peak of its swing, is indulgence. On the other side, at the opposite peak, is restriction. And so much of our lives are spent in the exhausting, uncontrolled swing between these 2 points. Think about how this pattern shows up in our own lives. It's the classic cycle of dieting. For 5 days, we walk the path of not enough. We are incredibly strict. We deny ourselves everything. We eat with perfect discipline. We are being good. But this creates a kind of tension, a pressure that has to be released. And so, on the weekend, the pendulum swings with equal and opposite force all the way to the other side. We enter the path of too much. We indulge. We eat all the things we denied ourselves. We let go of all the rules. We are bad. And then, on Monday morning, the feeling of guilt and regret from that indulgence becomes the very fuel that starts the next swing back toward restriction. And on it goes. It's the same with our work. We might spend a week in a state of hyperproductivity. We work late. We answer emails at all hours. We push ourselves relentlessly. This is the path of not enough, where rest is seen as a weakness. But by the end of the week, we are completely burned out. And so, to compensate, the pendulum swings. We collapse onto the sofa and spend hours in a state of mindless consumption, binge-watching a show, scrolling endlessly. This is the path of too much, a desperate search for easy pleasure to numb the exhaustion. And then, the feeling of having wasted that time fuels the guilt that drives us back to hyperproductivity. The result of this constant swinging, this back and forth between too much and not enough, is a deep and a profound kind of weariness. It's not a peaceful tiredness. It's the chaotic exhaustion of a mind that has no center. A mind that is constantly lurching from one extreme to the other is a mind that is never, ever at rest. It is a mind that is always off balance. And a mind that is off balance cannot find the stillness and the stability it needs to settle into sleep. It is still swinging, even when the body is lying still. It is still caught in that tiring, endless, and ultimately fruitless search for a peace that neither of these extremes can ever provide. So, to truly understand this idea of a middle way, it helps to go back to the story of the man who first discovered it. Because he didn't just think of this idea as an abstract concept, he lived it. He walked both of these extreme paths to their very end. The story begins a very long time ago, in a kingdom nestled in the Himalayan foothills. A prince was born, and his name was Siddhartha, and his father, the king, was given a prophecy that this boy would grow up to be one of two things. He would either be the greatest king the world had ever known, a conqueror of nations, or he would be a great spiritual teacher, a person who would conquer himself. And his father, being a king, very much wanted the first option. He wanted his son to be a powerful ruler, not a wandering hermit. And so, the king decided he would create a life for his son that was so perfect, so filled with pleasure, and so completely free from any kind of suffering, that the boy would never, ever have a reason to question his life. He would be so content that the thought of searching for some deeper meaning would never even occur to him. So, the king built a series of magnificent palaces for his son, and within the walls of these palaces, he created a perfect world. This was the path of too much in its most absolute and perfect form. Every single thing that could bring a human being pleasure, Siddhartha had in abundance. He was dressed in the softest, most beautiful silks. The air in the palace was always filled with the gentle sound of music and the sweet scent of flowers. The food he ate was the most delicious imaginable, prepared by the finest chefs, and it would appear before him the moment he felt even the slightest hint of hunger. He was surrounded by beautiful people, by art, by gardens, by everything the world had to offer that was good and pleasant and lovely. And the king gave a very strict order. Siddhartha was never, ever to be exposed to the realities of human life. He was never to see anyone who was sick. He was never to see anyone who was old and frail. And he was certainly never to see any sign of death. His world was to be a bubble of perfect, youthful, and vibrant pleasure. And for many years, the king's plan seemed to work. Siddhartha lived this life of effortless enjoyment. He was a passive consumer of endless, beautiful experiences. But slowly, quietly, a strange and a subtle feeling began to grow in his heart. It wasn't a pain. It wasn't a great suffering. It was a kind of deep, unshakable boredom, a feeling of profound meaninglessness. He began to realize that all of these pleasures were like beautiful, shimmering soap bubbles. They were wonderful to look at for a moment, but the instant you tried to hold on to them, they would pop, leaving nothing behind but a memory and the desire for another one. The beautiful song would end, and the silence that followed would feel empty. The delicious meal would be over, and he would just be waiting for the next one. He started to feel like a ghost, drifting through a perfect, but ultimately unreal, world. And a deep, quiet question began to form in his mind. Is this all there is? He realized that a life built only on receiving pleasure, a life lived entirely on the path of too much, was a beautiful and a very comfortable prison. But it was a prison nonetheless. He knew, with a certainty that he could no longer ignore, that this could not be the way to a true and a lasting peace. And so, he made a decision. He decided he had to see what was beyond the palace walls. And so, the young prince, Siddhartha, made a choice. He could no longer live a life that he knew was built on a beautiful illusion. He knew that the temporary, fleeting pleasures of the palace were not the path to a deep and a lasting peace. And so, one night, in the quiet darkness while the palace slept, he decided to leave it all behind. He took off the fine silks he was wearing and put on the simple, rough cloth of a common wanderer. He cut off his long hair. He walked away from the endless food, the soft beds, the beautiful music, and the life of complete and utter comfort that he had always known. He stepped out from behind the palace walls, and for the very first time in his life, he saw the real world. And what he saw shocked him to his very core. He saw a man who was bent over with old age, his body frail and weak. He saw a person who was sick, lying on the side of the road, moaning in pain. And he saw a funeral procession, and he understood, for the first time, the reality of death. He saw that the human experience was filled with suffering, a truth from which he had been perfectly protected his entire life. And these sights filled him with a profound sense of urgency. But then he saw a fourth sight. He saw a holy man, an ascetic, a wanderer like he had just become. And this man had nothing. He was thin. He had only a simple robe and a begging bowl. And yet, on his face, there was a look of deep, unshakable calm. And a new idea was born in Siddhartha's mind. A powerful and a very compelling idea. He thought, I have had everything that the world has to offer, and it did not bring me peace. This man has nothing, and yet he seems to have the peace I am looking for. Therefore, the answer must not be in getting more. The answer must be in needing less. The answer must be in conquering all of the body's desires and all of life's pains. And with this new conviction, he began to walk the other path, the path of not enough. And he did not do it by halves. He dedicated himself to it with an iron will. He sought out the most famous teachers of self-denial, and he mastered all of their techniques. He practiced holding his breath until he felt an intense, explosive pain in his head. He learned to survive on almost no food at all, sometimes just a single grain of rice a day, until his body was so thin you could see the shape of his spine through the skin of his stomach. He slept in frightening forests, on the cold, hard ground, sometimes on a bed of thorns. He exposed his body to the most extreme heat and the most bitter cold, believing that if he could just train his mind to ignore all of this discomfort, he would finally be free. For 6 long years, he lived this life, and his dedication became legendary. Other seekers of wisdom saw him as a great master of this path. He was the ultimate example of a person who had conquered their own body. But on the inside, a very different story was unfolding. After 6 years of this relentless struggle, he sat down by a river one day, and he took a quiet, honest look at the state of his own mind. Was he at peace? No, he was at war. His mind was not calm. It was a constant, raging battlefield, where all of his energy was focused on fighting the next pang of hunger, the next feeling of pain, the next shiver of cold. He had not eliminated his desires. He had just made them his entire world. He realized, in a moment of profound and simple clarity, that a mind that is at war with itself, a mind that is in a constant state of struggle and striving, cannot be a peaceful mind. He had just traded the prison of pleasure for the prison of pain. Both were just different kinds of striving. Both were just different ways of being deeply, deeply at ease. And he knew, with a certainty that shook him to his core, that this path, too, was not the way. So, let's just stay here for a moment, in this very quiet and this very important scene. Imagine this man, Siddhartha, who has now walked both of these extreme paths to their absolute and final conclusions. First, imagine him as the prince, sitting in his beautiful palace garden. He is surrounded by every possible comfort, every possible luxury, every possible pleasure. He has a soft silk cushion to sit on. The air is filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of a gentle lute playing in the distance. He has just finished a perfect meal. And yet, as he sits there in the middle of this perfect world, he feels a profound and a hollow kind of emptiness. He feels a deep, restless dissatisfaction. He knows, with an unshakable certainty, that this is not the way. Now, imagine him 6 long years later. He is sitting on the hard, dusty bank of a river. He is no longer a prince. He is a wanderer. His body is little more than a skeleton, ravaged by years of starvation and hardship. His skin is caked with dirt. He is in constant, low-level pain from hunger and exhaustion. He has just finished a day of the most extreme and grueling meditative practices. And as he sits there, in the middle of this world of self-inflicted pain, he feels a profound and an agitated kind of exhaustion. He feels a deep, restless dissatisfaction. And he knows, with an equally unshakable certainty, that this is not the way either. This is the great discovery. This is the turning point of the entire story. It is the moment when he finally, truly, and deeply understands a simple truth. The truth is that the path to peace is not found at either of these two extremes. A mind that is constantly chasing pleasure, a mind that is always wanting the next good thing, is a mind that is agitated. It is restless. It is never content with the present moment, because it is always leaning forward into the future, hoping for the next wave of stimulation. It is a mind that is off balance, and a mind that is constantly fighting its own nature. A mind that is in a state of war with its own body is also a mind that is agitated. It is in a state of constant, stressful effort. It is never at peace with the present moment, because it is always trying to conquer it, to deny it, to overcome it. It is also a mind that is off balance. He realized that both paths, the path of indulgence and the path of denial, are fueled by the exact same thing. They are both fueled by a deep, powerful, and restless sense of striving. One strives for more pleasure. The other strives for more control. But both are forms of intense, constant, and ultimately, deeply tiring effort. And in this quiet moment of recognition, sitting by the river, he remembered a very simple and a very ordinary memory from his childhood. He remembered a day, long ago, when he was just a little boy. He was sitting under a rose apple tree. His father was busy with some royal ceremony nearby, and the little boy was just sitting there with nothing to do. He wasn't seeking any great pleasure. He wasn't fighting any great pain. He was just being. He was watching the world go by. And he remembered that in that simple, effortless, and unstriving state, he had felt a natural and a very deep sense of peace and contentment. And a new idea began to dawn on him. An idea that was not extreme and not dramatic, but was simple and gentle and quiet. What if the path to peace was not a path of striving at all? What if it wasn't about adding more or taking away more? What if the path was simply in the middle? What if the path was about finding a gentle and a wise and a compassionate balance between the two extremes? What if the path was not a battle to be won, but a simple, natural state of being to be returned to? This was the great discovery. This was the beginning of the middle way. So, we have arrived at this great discovery, this profound insight that came to a man who had experienced both of life's extremes. He had been the prince in the palace and the wanderer in the forest, and he had found that neither the path of total indulgence nor the path of total denial could lead to a lasting peace. And so, what is this third option? What is this middle way that he discovered in that quiet moment of clarity? The best way to understand it is with a very simple and a very beautiful metaphor that he is said to have remembered. It is the metaphor of a musical instrument, like a lute or a sitar. Imagine you are trying to tune the string of a lute. If the string is too loose, if there is too much slack, what happens when you pluck it? You don't get a beautiful note. You get a dull, lifeless thud. There is no resonance, no music. It is just a flabby, useless string. This is the path of too much. This is the life of the prince in the palace. A life without any discipline, without any focus, without any healthy tension, is a slack and a lifeless thing. It is a life that is so loose and so self-indulgent that it cannot produce any real meaning, or any real beauty, or any real, lasting satisfaction. It is just a series of dull thuds, one after the other. Now, imagine you go to the other extreme. You take the tuning peg and you twist it, and you twist it, and you twist it. The string becomes tighter and tighter and tighter, It is stretched to its absolute limit. It is incredibly taut and rigid. And now, what happens when you try to pluck it? It produces a harsh, sharp, and unpleasant sound. It is a sound that is full of tension and stress. And if you tighten it just a little bit more, the string will snap. This is the path of not enough. This is the life of the wanderer in the wilderness. A life of extreme self-denial, of harsh and relentless discipline, is a life that is stretched too tight. It is brittle. It is joyless. And it is always just one moment away from breaking completely. It cannot produce any beautiful music either. It can only produce a sound of pain. So where is the music? Where is the beautiful, clear, resonant note that we are all looking for? The music is in the middle. The middle way is the art of tuning the string of your life so that it is not too loose and not too tight, but is tuned just right. It is the discovery that the most beautiful and the most harmonious life is a life of gentle balance. The middle way is not a compromise. It is not a boring 50-50 split between pleasure and pain. It is a path of profound wisdom. It is the wisdom to know that your body needs to be cared for, not abused, but also not overindulged. It is the wisdom to know that your mind needs to be focused and disciplined, but not so harshly that it becomes brittle and joyless. It is the wisdom to know that a good life includes both pleasure and effort, both rest and work, both comfort and challenge. It is a path of kindness. It is the kindness to give your body the food it needs to be healthy, but not so much that it becomes heavy and unwell. It is the kindness to give your mind the rest it needs to be clear, but not so much that it becomes lazy and dull. It is not a fixed point. It is not a rigid rule. It is a constant, gentle, and compassionate act of listening to yourself and making small adjustments, day by day, moment by moment. It is the quiet, gentle, and deeply wise path of being kind to yourself. So, when we hear this phrase, the middle way, and this idea of finding the perfect balance, our mind can sometimes get the wrong idea. The inner expert, that part of us that loves precision and control, can hear the word balance, and it can imagine something very stressful. It can imagine a tightrope. It imagines that the middle way is a thin, wobbly rope stretched high up in the air between two great cliffs. On one side is the cliff of indulgence, and on the other is the cliff of denial. And our job, our great and difficult task, is to walk this tightrope perfectly, without ever leaning too far in one direction or the other. It imagines that a single misstep, a single moment of imbalance, will send us plummeting down into the canyon of failure below. And if this is what the middle way was, it would not be a path to peace at all. It would be a new and even more stressful kind of perfectionism. It would be a life of constant, anxious tension, a life of always worrying about making a mistake, of always being afraid of falling. It would just be another way for our inner taskmaster to judge us and to find us lacking. But the real middle way is not like that at all. It is nothing like a tightrope. I want you to imagine something different. Imagine instead a wide, gentle path, walking through a quiet meadow. The path is soft under your feet. It's not a thin, narrow line. It's a broad, comfortable road. On either side of the path, there are no dangerous cliffs. There is just soft, green grass. The path is so wide that you have plenty of room to move. This is a much better picture of the middle way. It is not about walking a perfect, razor-thin line. It is simply about staying on this wide, gentle, and forgiving path. So what does it mean to walk on this path? It means that, of course, you are going to drift a little from time to time. You are a human being, not a machine. Some days, you might find yourself walking a little closer to the left side of the path, the side that is a bit more indulgent. Maybe you ate a little more than you intended, or you rested a little more than you planned. Now, if you were on a tightrope, this would be a disaster. But on this wide, gentle path, it is not a problem at all. You just notice it. You can look down and say, I see I've drifted a bit to the left today. And what do? You don't panic. You don't scold yourself. You don't declare that you have failed. You just make a small, gentle, and almost effortless course correction. You just gently start to steer yourself back toward the center of the path. And some other days, you might find yourself drifting a bit to the right, the side that is a bit more restrictive. Maybe you worked too hard and forgot to rest. Maybe you were a little too critical of yourself. And again, you just notice it. I see I've been walking a little too close to the edge of the grass on the right. And your response is the same. A gentle, kind, and compassionate course correction. You just steer yourself back toward the comfortable middle. This is the great freedom of the middle way. The goal is not to achieve a state of perfect, unwavering balance. The goal is to become skilled at the art of gentle, compassionate course correction. It's the difference between the violent, exhausting swing of the pendulum from one extreme to the other and a series of tiny, almost imperceptible adjustments that keep you in a wide, comfortable zone of well-being. It is a path of kindness. It is a path that has room for your humanity. It is a path that understands that you will not be perfect, and it doesn't ask you to be. It only asks you to be aware and to be gentle with yourself as you continue to walk. So, we have this beautiful, calming image in our minds now. The middle way is not a stressful, wobbly tightrope. It is a wide, gentle, and forgiving path through a quiet meadow. The goal is not a rigid, perfect balance, but the gentle and the compassionate art of making small course corrections. Now, let's take this idea out of the realm of stories and metaphors, and let's bring it into the reality of your own day, the day that has just passed. Because this gentle path is not some far-off spiritual goal. It is a way of looking at your own, real, and very ordinary life. I want you to just gently, without any pressure, allow your mind to drift back over the last 12 to 16 hours. Not as a judge, and not as a critic, but as a kind and a curious observer, just walking that path with yourself. Let's think about the food you ate today. There's a good chance that it wasn't a day of perfect, flawless nutrition. And there's also a good chance that it wasn't a day of complete and utter indulgence. It was probably somewhere in the middle. Maybe you had a healthy lunch, and then you had a piece of cake in the afternoon. You drifted a little to the side of pleasure, and then you drifted back. That is the middle way in action. It is not about eating perfectly. It is about finding a sustainable and a kind way of nourishing your body. And if you found that balance today, you can just quietly acknowledge that. Now, let's think about the work you did today, the effort you put out. It's very unlikely that you spent the entire day in a state of perfect, unbroken productivity. It's also unlikely that you spent the whole day doing absolutely nothing at all. Your day was probably a mix. There were probably moments of focus and moments of distraction. There were times you felt motivated, and times you felt a little bit tired. You drifted from effort to rest and back again. That is the middle way in action. It is the natural, human rhythm of energy. It is not about being a perfect machine. It is about honoring the natural flow of your own capacity. And let's think about your relationships with other people today. It's very rare to have a day where every single interaction is perfectly patient and kind and wise. And it's also very rare to have a day where every single interaction is angry and selfish. Most of our days are somewhere in the middle. There were probably moments you felt generous and connected. And there were probably moments you felt a little impatient or a little withdrawn. You drifted from connection to solitude, from patience to frustration, and back again. That, too, is the middle way. It is the path of being a real, complex, and imperfect human being in a world with other real, complex, and imperfect human beings. As you look back on your day in this way, you might start to see something new. You might start to realize that your day, which your inner critic might have labeled as not good enough, was actually a quiet masterpiece of balance. It was a constant and mostly unconscious series of these gentle course corrections. The middle way is not something you have to go out and find. It is not a state you have to achieve. In many ways, it is the path your own life is already walking. And the only thing we have to do is to recognize it, to see the wisdom that is already present in our own imperfect and our own very human days. And in that recognition, we can let go of the exhausting need to be anything other than what we already are. So, we have looked back on our day and we have seen that it was likely a quiet dance along this wide and gentle path. It was a series of small and mostly unconscious drifts and corrections. And this is a very peaceful and a very reassuring realization. But there is another, and perhaps even more important, layer to this philosophy. Because what happens on those days when it doesn't feel like a small drift? What happens on the days when we don't just wander a little to the side of the path, but we feel like we have sprinted off of it completely and are now lost in the tall grass of one of the extremes? These are the days that can cause us the most distress when we lie down to sleep. A day where we really did indulge far too much. A day where we completely abandoned our healthy habits and just gave in to every impulse. Or a day where we were relentlessly, brutally hard on ourselves. A day where we pushed ourselves far beyond our limits. And now we feel completely burned out and brittle. On nights like these, the voice of the inner taskmaster, the judge, is at its loudest. It sees that you are far from the path, and it doesn't offer you a kind and a gentle invitation to return. Instead, it begins to shout at you. It tells you that you have failed completely. It tells you that you have ruined everything. It uses a language of shame and of guilt and of hopelessness. And it makes the journey back to the center of that path feel like a long and a difficult and an almost impossible climb. The judgment we place on ourselves for having been unbalanced is often a much greater source of pain than the imbalance itself. And this is where the true kindness of the middle way reveals itself. The middle way is not just about staying on the path. It is about the art of coming back to the path. And the most important part of this philosophy is the belief that no matter how far you have strayed, the path is always, always right here, waiting for you. It never disappears. You are never, ever too far away to gently step back onto it. And the act of returning is not meant to be a punishment. It is not meant to be a harsh and a grueling journey of self-correction. The act of returning is meant to be an act of profound and of simple kindness. So, if you are lying here tonight, and you feel that you have spent your day far off the path, on one side or the other, I want you to hear this. The middle way does not ask you to run all the way back to the other extreme to make up for it. That would just be another violent swing of the pendulum. If you have spent your day in the wilderness of being too hard on yourself, the path back is not to swing all the way over into a state of reckless indulgence. The path back is just to take one small, gentle step toward kindness. That step might simply be the act of taking one slow, deep breath. That is all. That is a step back onto the path. And if you have spent your day in the palace of too much indulgence, the path back is not to wake up tomorrow and create a long list of harsh and restrictive rules for yourself. The path back is just to take one small, gentle step toward balance. That step might simply be the quiet intention to drink a glass of water when you wake up. That is all. That is a step back onto the path. The kindness of the middle way is in its understanding that the journey is made up of a million of these tiny, gentle, and compassionate steps. It is not about a great, heroic leap back to perfection. It is about the quiet, humble, and infinitely patient art of just coming back. And this next breath, this simple, quiet moment of rest, this can be your first step. You are already on your way back. In fact, you have already arrived. So, we have spent a lot of time now in the world of stories and ideas. We have been walking that wide, gentle path in our minds, exploring its meaning and its kindness. But this philosophy, the middle way, is not meant to be just an intellectual concept that you think about. Its entire purpose is to create a change in the way you actually feel. It is something that can be felt in your body, a tangible, physical sensation. The mind and the body are deeply connected. A mind that is caught in an extreme state will always create a corresponding feeling in the body. And by learning to recognize these feelings, we can become even more skilled at gently guiding ourselves back to the center. Let's just for a moment remember the physical feeling of the path of too much. Think of a day where you have truly overindulged. A day of too much rich food, too much screen time, too much stimulation. At the end of that day, as you lie in bed, what is the feeling in your body? It's often not a feeling of peaceful satisfaction. It's a feeling of being heavy, of being sluggish, of being overfull. There can be a kind of restless, buzzing energy just underneath the surface, a feeling of being wired but tired. Your body feels agitated and unsettled. It is a body that is out of balance. Now, let's remember the physical feeling of the other extreme, the path of not enough. Think of a day where you have been relentlessly hard on yourself. A day of too much work, not enough rest, too much self-criticism. As you lie in bed at the end of that day, what is the feeling in your body? It's not a feeling of clean, pure strength. It's often a feeling of being tight and brittle and completely drained. It's the feeling of running on fumes. There can be a tightness in the jaw, a tension in the shoulders, a kind of fragile, shaky exhaustion. This, too, is a body that is profoundly out of balance. So what does the middle way feel like? What is the physical sensation of being on that wide, gentle path? It is not a dramatic feeling. It is not a great peak of excitement, and it is not a deep valley of exhaustion. The physical feeling of balance is a quiet and a very simple state of ease. It is a feeling of being grounded, a feeling of being settled in your own skin. It is a body that is not agitated and not tense. It is a body where the muscles feel soft and heavy and relaxed. It's the feeling you might have after a gentle walk or after a warm bath. It is a state of calm, but it is not a state of being completely drained. There is a quiet, steady, and a very gentle kind of energy present. It is the feeling of a system that is running smoothly, without any strain. And the best way to find this feeling at any time is to simply bring your attention to your own breath. Your breath, when you are not trying to control it, is the perfect teacher of the middle way. It is not too forceful, and it is not too shallow. It is not trying to achieve anything. It just flows in and it flows out in a simple, gentle, and a perfectly balanced rhythm. So, just for a moment, I want you to feel that rhythm in your own body. Don't try to change it. Just notice it. Feel the gentle rise on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath. This quiet, steady, and effortless rhythm. This is the physical feeling of the middle way. It is always here. It is always available to you. It is the feeling of a body that is not struggling. It is the feeling of a body that is finally, simply, at peace. So, we have felt the quiet rhythm of balance in our own breath. We have discovered that the middle way is not some far-off, abstract idea, but a tangible, physical feeling of ease that is always available to us. And now, we can bring this awareness to the place where we are right now. Because the very act of being in this bed at this time is perhaps the most perfect and the most practical expression of the middle way that you can find. Let's think about this for a moment. All day long, you are faced with a million choices, a million different pulls on your attention. And as the evening deepens, you are faced with one final, fundamental choice. And that choice is often a quiet battle between the two extremes we've been talking about. On one side, there is the powerful pull of the path of too much. The night is full of temptations for more stimulation, for more pleasure. There is the lure of one more episode of a show. There is the endless, glowing scroll of your phone, promising one more interesting video, one more piece of news, one more connection. There is the temptation to stay up late, chasing a feeling of entertainment or escape, squeezing every last drop out of the day. This is the path of the prince in his palace. It is a path of striving for more sensation. And on the other side, there is the quiet, but often very heavy, pull of the path of not enough. This is the voice of the inner taskmaster, who looks at this time of rest and sees it as a waste. This is the voice that whispers that you should be doing something productive right now. You should be answering one more email, or planning your day for tomorrow, or reading a book that will make you smarter. It is the voice that can make you feel a subtle sense of guilt for simply lying here, doing nothing. It tells you that rest is a form of laziness, a weakness that you should try to overcome. This is the path of the wanderer in the wilderness. It is a path of striving for more control, for more self-improvement. And you, by being here right now, have chosen neither. You have made a quiet and a very wise decision. You have chosen the middle way. By choosing to turn off the screens, to quiet the noise, and to come to this bed, you have gently said no to the path of too much. You have recognized, on some deep level, that more stimulation will not bring you the peace you are looking for. You have honored your body's need to be free from that restless, agitated energy. And by choosing to allow your body this time of rest, you have also gently said no to the path of not enough. You have recognized that your value as a person is not measured by your productivity. You have honored the profound wisdom of your body, which knows that rest is not a weakness, but an essential and a non-negotiable part of a healthy, balanced life. It is the time when you heal, when you repair, when you integrate the lessons of the day. This bed, right now, is your sanctuary of the middle way. It is a place that is not too loose and not too tight. It is a place that is free from the striving for more pleasure, and it is free from the striving for more self-improvement. It is a place where you are not required to be entertained, and you are not required to be productive. It is a place where you are simply allowed to be. So, just for a moment, feel the wisdom in the choice you have already made. Feel the simple rightness of being here. You have already tuned the string of your day perfectly. You have landed in the exact right place. This is not a state you need to achieve. It is the state you are already in. And all that is left to do now is to give yourself permission to fully inhabit it, to sink into this quiet, balanced, and deeply peaceful state that you have so wisely chosen for yourself. And so, we have arrived at this quiet and a very simple place. We have come to see this bed not just as a piece of furniture, but as a sanctuary, a physical representation of the middle way, a place free from the striving of too much and the striving of not enough, a place where we are simply allowed to be. You would think that this is the end of the journey. You have done all the work. You have made the wise choice to be here. And yet, our minds, in their infinite and creative restlessness, can invent one final task, one last and very subtle form of striving. And that is the task of trying to fall asleep. After letting go of everything else, our inner expert can reinvent itself one last time as a sleep expert. It begins to monitor your state. It asks questions. Am I relaxed enough? Is this working? Why am I still awake? Am I breathing correctly? It takes the simple, natural, and effortless act of falling asleep, and it turns it into a performance. A final test for the day that you can either pass or fail. And the moment it does this, it begins to tighten the string of the lute once more. The effort of trying to relax is a form of tension. The desire to be asleep is a form of wanting. And just like that, we find ourselves, in this final moment, accidentally stepping off the gentle path and back into a state of struggle. So, we need one final, and most gentle, course correction. We need to apply the wisdom of the middle way to the very act of resting itself. And the most perfect tool we have for this is always with us. It is your own breath. Your breath, when you are not trying to interfere with it, is the most perfect and the most boring teacher of the middle way. Think about it. It is not too much. It is not a great, forceful gasp for air that leaves you agitated. And it is not too little. It is not a shallow, tight little sip of air that leaves you feeling starved. It is perfectly and effortlessly just right. It is exactly what your body needs in this moment, without any conscious thought or effort from you at all. So, this is the final and the only instruction. I want you to gently bring your attention to the physical sensation of your own breathing. You are not being asked to change it. You are not being asked to control it. You are simply being invited to notice it. Just feel the gentle sensation of the air as it enters your body, and the equally gentle sensation of the air as it leaves your body. Maybe you notice the soft rise of your chest or your stomach on the in-breath, and the simple, effortless fall on the out-breath. There is nothing to achieve here. There is only this simple, quiet, and repetitive rhythm. And when a thought inevitably arises, a thought about the day, a thought about sleep, a thought about anything at all, you do not have to be frustrated. You have not failed. That is simply your mind doing what it has done all day. And you can greet that thought with the same gentle kindness of the middle way. You can just notice it without judgment, and then, like making a small, gentle course correction on that wide path, you just guide your attention back to the simple, boring, and profoundly calming sensation of your own breath. This is the final letting go. It is letting go of the need to be the one who falls asleep. It is trusting that your body, in its deep and its ancient wisdom, knows exactly what to do. Your only job is to provide this quiet, balanced, and gentle space. So, let your awareness rest here now, in the simple, balanced, and effortless rhythm of your own breath. Let it be the quiet, steady, and anchor of your attention. This simple, balanced breath is the only guide you need now. Let it be the quiet, steady rhythm that carries you, without any effort at all, into the deep and the peaceful and the well-earned rest that you deserve. And so, the story is told. The prince has left his palace. The wanderer has left the wilderness. And the gentle, quiet wisdom of the middle way has found its home, right here, in the simple, balanced rhythm of your own breath. The words have all been spoken now. They have served their purpose. They were just a quiet stream of sounds, designed to be a gentle companion, to hold the attention of your thinking mind for a little while, so that your body could begin its deep and important work of letting go. And now that you are here, in this quiet place, the words can dissolve. Let them fade away into the background. Let the memory of my voice become indistinct, like a sound you are hearing from a room far, far away. The ideas are no longer important. The only thing that is important now is this feeling of quiet, of balance, of ease. There are no more extremes. There is no more striving. The great, exhausting pendulum that swings between too much and not enough has finally, gently, come to rest in the very center. And what is here, in this center? Not a grand excitement, not a harsh discipline. What is here is just a simple and a very profound state of being. There is nothing you need to add to this moment to make it better, and there is nothing you need to take away. It is complete exactly as it is. The day, with all of its drifts and all of its corrections, is over. The path has led you here, to this place of rest. And you have arrived. There is nothing left to do now. There is nothing left to figure out. There is only the quiet rhythm of your breath, the gentle tide, moving in and moving out. Your only work now is the work of non-doing, the work of simply allowing yourself to be here, to be at rest, to be at peace, to be still. Allow this quiet, balanced rhythm to be the only thing in your awareness now. Let it be the soft, gentle music that your mind can listen to as it drifts. Let it be the anchor that holds you in this moment of deep and simple peace. So just rest now. Just rest.